Sometimes good teams find a way. Dare I say, the Edmonton Oilers are a good team.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to today's Victory Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my 10th NHL season doing digital hockey content. This is my third as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we've got your team covered every single day. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. So, on today's Victory Friday edition of Locked On Oilers, we are going to walk through the come-from-behind victory against the Winnipeg Jets in a few different phases. To start out, we'll talk about the game itself, why it was in the balance. Even at 3-1, it felt like the Oilers had a chance to get back in this game. In our second segment, we will talk about the notable improvement in team foot speed with Jack Roslovic's return to the lineup, IKE Howard getting, I wouldn't say penned in, but at least until some injured players return. And finally, to tie a bow on this show, we'll discuss whether or not the Oilers are turning the corner in terms of the quality team they are. So to start out, the Winnipeg Jets had lost 10 in a row. I believe 4 in regulation, 6 in overtime, something to that effect, maybe 6 regulation, 4. They have lost 10 games in a row. The Jets sit in dead last in the Central Division. They are a team that is staring down the abyss. And sometimes when you're playing that type of team, you get caught a little by surprise. And I'm not going to say the Oilers were taking the Jets lightly. This is the NHL. Everybody knows everybody's good at hockey on some level. And these are the pros. Anything can happen on any given time. That is why we play the games, to find out what happens when the undermanned, injured, banged up, losing team plays a really interesting team, is how I would classify Edmonton right now. And early on in this game, the Jets did a really good job of getting game control. Now, as we often discuss, as my everydayers know, game control does not necessarily correlate with good play. If you have the puck a ton in the offensive zone, but it's largely perimeter shots, point shots, or shots that don't even get through, they only get registered as scoring chances, not even shots on goal, you're going to have a hard time winning. And that was really the story of this game for me. On the night, through that first period, in the first period, the Jets get credited with 18 scoring chances. Only 10 of those end up being registered as shots on goal. But from there, the Oilers get going downhill, and they pull away in this game. In the second period, the Oilers outchance Winnipeg 23-11. The third period, 17-3. Shots on goal, 12-3 in the second, 10-0 in the third. High danger, 9-1 in the second, and then even 1-1 in the third. That type of counterattack, that type of pushback shows you just how dangerous this Edmonton team can be. And candidly, I know beating a bad team does not deserve a lot of kudos. I know having to come back from 3-1 down against a bad team especially does not deserve kudos. But because of the way this Oilers season has gone, I do think it's worth highlighting when you see breakthroughs, because for a lot of this season, especially the first 2 months before Hyman really got going in the lineup, there was a real sense of dread over this team when they didn't score first. When they didn't score first, they found themselves in a really difficult spot. Because their goaltending was so bad, they were having to score 3 or 4 or 5 goals to come back and win these games. If I remember correctly, I want to go through my notes here. I think it was 10 straight games, 15 straight games, Jack Michaels had said on the broadcast, being decided by who scored. Yeah, the Oilers had played, going into tonight's game, 20 straight games where the team that scored first in that given game won. Tonight, the Oilers bucked that trend. I was very impressed with the way the Oilers managed their push. And yes, the Jets are bad. You actively saw the Jets start to turtle. You saw the Jets take up the posture of somebody in the middle of a circle and getting kicked by everybody else. The Oilers started coming at them downhill, really downhill sledding, creating dangerous offense. And I think the game really jumps out for me when McDavid scores right at the end of that second period. So you go into the third, you're only down one, and you have momentum. And yes, momentum is tenuous. Momentum is not measurable, but you could feel it. And right now, the way Connor McDavid is playing, you know he's going to get his. The way we talk about elite scorers in basketball or elite wide receivers or running backs in football, these guys are so good that all you can hope to do is minimize them, to contain them. You used to talk about, could you hold Julio Jones to 70 yards? And for most receivers, 70 yards, a pretty good day at the office. But for Julio, it's a little disappointing. In basketball, back in the day when we're talking about, can you hold Steph to under 10 3 attempts because he's going to hit 4 of them, and that's going to be the difference between us winning and losing. Can we contest enough of those and make Steph, 27% from 3 as opposed to 35? And look, I know we're talking really in the weeds here, but when we're talking about the best of the best, the way we are, when we're talking about McDavid in the form he's in right now, he's going to get his. And they made the joke on the Sportsnet intermission report. They were talking about what they were going to say during the intermission, and they both said, well, we'll see. Connor's going to do something at some point. And lo and behold, he makes a really nice play that's set up by really good board work by Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who lost the initial puck, recovered it, got it to Leon, who got it up the ice, and then ultimately finds McDavid, who's streaking down the ice. And McDavid receives the puck with his skate, kicks the puck up to his blade in one fluid motion, doesn't lose his stride in the slightest, gets the puck onto his forehand, and roofs one past Hellebuyck. I mean, it is just sublime hockey. It is hockey being played at the highest possible level. It is as if the stick is a part of McDavid's body, and the puck, when it's on his stick, has effectively become a part of his body, the way he is able to manipulate. And the thing that always has impressed me about Connor, the earliest highlights of him, even as a junior player at the World Juniors or with Erie, was how easy, and not just easy, how fluid everything looked. There wasn't a cognitive moment. Whenever I'm playing anything at this point in my life, whether that's half-court basketball, if that's roller hockey, occasionally if we're doing slow pitch, I have to think about what I'm about to do. Like, if I'm bringing the ball up in half-court after taking the check, I have to manually pan my head, look where everybody else on the court is, decide if I want to drive, if I want to pass. Well, if I want to pass, who's open? Well, what's the defense? And that's taking seconds. McDavid makes these decisions faster than a blink, faster than a snap. It is impossible to describe just how fast he processes the game, and not just processes, because there are plenty of smart, intelligent guys in this league who make incredible things happen. Connor moves as fast as his brain. I think about how hard it is for me to talk as fast as I think sometimes, let alone skate at full speed with people bearing down on me, with a decision to make if I'm going to pass, if I'm going to shoot, if I'm going to dump it, if I'm going to carry it. And he is able to do this at the highest level of anybody I've ever seen. And again, I wasn't there for Wayne, wasn't there for Mario. I obviously was not there for Gordie Howe. I wasn't there for the Rocket, but this is as good of processing as we probably will ever see at the NHL level. Could we see someone more physically talented? Maybe. But in terms of the raw processing ability of information, the fluidity in which McDavid so effortlessly angled his foot, kicked the puck up to the skate blade, continued his drive on the net, scored, looked around and said, okay, we're in this game now. Let's make something happen. And speaking of speed and making things happen, we are going to take our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we will talk about what the temporarily, at least, new look bottom six means for the Oilers team speed right after this. There is nothing like being at an NHL game during hockey season. The speed that hits the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. That is my favorite feeling in the world. I went on Monday. I watched my Rangers lose to the Utah Mammoth in overtime. But every single time I turn off the concourse, I go up that little tunnel, I go up the 3 steps, I'm hit with that wave of light, I'm hit with the loud EDM, I'm hit with the smell of beer and hot dogs, and I am in my happy place. The Rangers are a miserably bad hockey team, but when I am there, at least in that moment, everything is okay. And unfortunately, getting tickets has become kind of annoying. Between queues, endless screens, and prices changing at checkout, that's where our friends at Game Time come in, giving the advantage back to fans. It's a hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. You can pull up the Game Time app and find incredible deals. My favorite feature from the Game Time ticket experience is the panoramic seat view, where you can see the view of the game from your seat in the app before you buy them, so there are no surprises on game day. In some NHL markets, you can find tickets for less than $25 per seat. And Game Time tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee to give you peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you so much to everybody that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, go check out the Everydayer Club. The details are down below in the show notes, where you can get access to the Everydayer Discord server for other Everydayers like you to talk their favorite teams. Okay, moment of zen. Very grateful Connor kept the point streak going. I am very grateful that IKE Howard got to stay in the lineup. I am a little grateful Trent Frederick stepped up to fight Logan Stanley. Even if it wasn't in his best interest, that's a guy who very clearly got a message from being healthy scratched the other day. So, with our moment of zen under our belt, and Pod Colson. Shout out Pods getting on the board, scoring quickly. And yeah, I know that the Jets scored a couple concurrently right after, but you do your job enough times for someone like Pod Colson, you get rewarded. Not a great goal, but we take those. And look, when it comes to the Oilers, we have watched them suffer a real brain drain over the last few years. And one of the real tolls of being a perennial contender is usually that your depth rotates a lot. You lose your bottom sixers because they go to other teams, because other teams have more cap space. One of the perils of being a consistent Stanley Cup contender is usually you're going to be up against the salary cap, because if you're going to be in conference finals or Stanley Cup finals consistently, you're going to have 3 or 4 star players taking up probably close to half, if not 40% of your salary cap. So you do need to get creative. You do need to get resourceful with your bottom six. And you think about some of the foot speed that has gone out the door over the last handful of years. Dylan Holloway leaves. Warren Fogle leaves. You lose Connor Brown. Matthias Janmark was injured for the first several months of this season. You think about losing Ryan McLeod, who you trade to Buffalo, and you get Matthew Savoy back. You think about losing Jeff Skinner. And look, they have tried amicably to replace some of that. Roslovic, I think, brings really good raw foot speed. I would argue that's probably Roslovic's best physical trait. I would point to, and he's not a forward, but Spencer Stastny, I have been really impressed with his mobility as far as how comfortable he looks out there. And when you're a bigger guy, especially as a defenseman, you can kind of move awkwardly. I always used to joke that once you reach a certain size as an NHL defenseman, you start to move like a refrigerator because you have to manually turn all the way. It's really hard to have good hip flexibility at that size, so you have to turn your entire body. And he's moving pretty well for a guy who I would characterize as big. And you saw it the other night against Nashville. Henrique leaves early with the injury. You slide Savoy in there. Trent Frederick was healthy scratched. Andrew Mangiapane was healthy scratched. And the Oilers looked noticeably faster on Monday against the Predators. And I went and pulled the numbers from the NHL Edge database, and I wanted to pull them up because it's one thing for my eye test watching on TV. TV is slower than in person. It's one of the great differences. It's why I always tell my friends, hockey's fun. Don't get me wrong. I love watching the game on TV. but it is so noticeably faster. The closer you sit, the faster it looks. And you get to a certain point, it is almost impossibly fast to keep up with, especially depending on the angle you're at. I remember a couple of years ago, one of my friends brought me to a Rangers game against the Avalanche the week of my birthday, for my birthday. And we were in like the 10th row, and it was basically impossible to follow play how fast it was going. And I think about the fact that these guys need to make decisions in that environment, let alone just watch it. And Henrique is under 50th percentile in all the skating speeds. So 22 miles per hour in overbursts, 20 to 22, and 18 to 20, under 50%. Mangiapane is under 50% in all of those categories as well. We dove into Mangiapane's regression in foot speed on yesterday's show, where we talked a little bit about the anatomy of that career year back in Calgary when he had the 30-goal season, the struggles of being a forechecker when you don't have as much foot speed, and then Trent Frederic, all under 50 percentile as well in terms of raw skate speed. And to be fair, the NHL Edge stats don't tell the entire picture because there are not a lot of opportunities for players to skate full out. There is not enough time and enough space often for guys to need to skate as fast as they possibly can in a straight line. That's why the skills contest, the fastest skater, is compelling, because it's not a game situation and it forces you to do something a little different outside of the norm. And you compare that to Savoy, and Savoy doesn't jump off the screen. 58th percentile for over 22 miles per hour, 67th for 20 to 22, and then 71st for 18 to 20. But in comparison to what Adam Henrique was giving you, just in terms of raw foot speed, Savoy is noticeably faster, and that matters. Roslovic, 93rd percentile top speed, 75th percentile 20 to 22, 64th percentile 18 to 20 miles per hour. That is an elite skating winger. I know Roslovic can be annoying. He doesn't win enough puck battles. He's not particularly physical. He's not great for link-up play. But that's one of the faster skaters in the NHL. He's one of the better puck carriers the Oilers have. I would dare say, after McDavid and Draisaitl, there's a reasonable argument that he's the third best forward in terms of carrying the puck into the offensive zone with possession. And then Howard, 63rd percentile for top speed, below 50th for the other ones, but at least bursts, short distance. There is capacity here. And something I like, and I forget who I saw say it on Twitter the other day on Monday during the Nashville game, both Roslovic and Howard play with the mentality of give me the puck. And not every player, especially a young player like Howard, has the confidence, or some would dare say the hubris, to be calling for the puck in a lot of situations. Some guys want to go with the flow. Some guys just want to do their job, blend in, and try not to stand out. And one of the real tells of a young player that is finding their way in the NHL is just how often they touch the puck. I'm not saying score, set goals up, shots on goal. How often are they involved in the play, receiving passes, keeping possession going, moving the puck along to where it needs to go? These are all little questions, and Howard does not get a lot of burn. I want to say they were probably under 10 minutes of even strength ice time tonight as a collective, and Howard individually was only at 12-15, which that doesn't sound like a lot at even strength especially, but the Oilers giving him that much ice time, which frankly, again, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think about the season Howard has had, where he has been a healthy scratch at times, where he has been a 12th or 13th forward at times, I want to say tonight, so Monday night against Nashville, 12:34, that was the most minutes he had played in a game all year. 12:34 was the most Howard had played in a game, and I do think some of that is a byproduct of Henry getting injured. And then tonight, all situations, 12:26. So up there for the most minutes in a game Howard has gotten, and I do think you can say that's a product of that line doing its job. And they were on the ice for 2 goals against, but they had 67% of the scoring chances, 70% of the shots on goal, 66% of the expected goals, and 67% of the high danger chances. They don't play a ton, but they are doing a noticeably better job than that third line of Frederic, Henrique, and Janmark were doing earlier in the season. We are going to take our second and final break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we'll tie a bow on this win over the Winnipeg Jets. I'm going to look ahead to Saturday, a showdown with the LA Kings, Ken Holland, and a whole lot more. I'm going to be honest, guys. Wildcard weekend is one of my favorite of the entire season, and FanDuel is in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers more ways to get in on the fun. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them in the app. Every game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterbacks play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bet feel that way too. It's a great slate. I'm going to be honest. Even Rams at the Panthers is a fun game. We start Saturday, Rams-Panthers. Saturday night, Packers-Bears. We start Sunday. Bills at the Jags. Sunday afternoon, for my money, this is my favorite game of the weekend on paper. 49ers at the Eagles. Chargers-Pats to close it out on Sunday. And then to cap off wildcard weekend, the Texans going up to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL game day. Thank you so much to everybody that is hanging out on this Victory Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. And I said it at the top, and I want to frame this final segment around this idea. I have been very critical of the Oilers, their depth, the teams they've beaten, and make no mistake, Winnipeg and Nashville are bad hockey teams. And I know Nashville went on a nice little run there, and they're not in the cellar anymore of the Western Conference. But I, for one, am not particularly convinced Nashville is good. Frankly, I think the Oilers are probably one of two things. They are either the worst good team or the best mediocre team. And in a league so rife, where there is an abundance of mediocrity, being the best mediocre team means you're like the 8th or 9th best team in the NHL. So while that might sound a bit derisive or insulting to say they're the best mediocre team, you saw the good version of that tonight. This was a game that was hanging in the balance, and the Oilers bore down the final stretch of this game and found a way. Was it pretty? No. Was it exciting? Yeah, actually pretty exciting. But you get the Hyman goal, and then you got a boost bomb on a power play to put this game away, and you had the Jets rattled. And that's one of the things I'll give the Oilers credit for tonight. It would have been really easy at 3-1 for this game to go the way a lot of games earlier this year went for them, where they would get behind early, their defense was leaky, they would struggle. And frankly, I haven't been hard on Calvin Pickard yet in this episode. He was terrible tonight. I'm just going to come out and say it. For the 200th time this year, he is not an NHL caliber goalie. His numbers, his last 5 starts are decent. He's got like a .911 save percentage. The Oilers are 2-3 in those games for the record. But at this point, every game the Oilers send Calvin Pickard out there to start, and I could almost argue Connor Ingram as well, you are relying entirely on your skaters, and you cannot realistically expect your goalie to give you anything. And I've been saying this all year. Even when Stu was here, even when the couple games Tristan Jarry had played, if you are asking these guys to give you anything, you are probably not in a good situation. The Oilers as a team are wholly constructed around their stars doing the dirty work, winning them games. The depth is there to not lose them the games. And then the goaltending is there to make us all hold our breath and hope they don't actually lose the Oilers the game. Because Calvin Pickard tried his best tonight. The goal he gives up to Tanner Pearson is disgusting. Tanner Pearson is a depth forward. He's carved out a nice NHL career. He's been in the league a long time. But for an NHL goalie to get head faked by somebody going behind the net and then just coming back to the other side is ridiculous. I don't want to get on guys who are underqualified. I say it often. When a player is that clearly overmatched by the situation they are facing, I have empathy for them. That is asking someone to do something they are physically incapable of doing. And Pickard is a nice guy. If you want to believe the reports by various national media guys, The Oilers wanted to either send him back to the AHL or trade him or waive him. And the guys on the team said no. There was that one game a couple weeks ago where everybody was talking about it like this might be Pickard's last game as an Oiler. And instead, you trade Stuart Skinner, Tristan Jarry gets hurt after a handful of starts, and you are riding an AHL caliber goalie tandem. And God bless McDavid's month and change over the last 5 weeks, where he has been the best player in the world for sure, assuredly. Not he is the best player in the world, but McKinnon's looming, the objects closer than they appear in the mirror, like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. McDavid has been the best hockey player in the world for 5 straight weeks at the minimum, and he is producing every single night at a level that is unlocking things for this team. He is playing at such a high level. It does not matter that they have terrible goaltending. It does not matter they are dressing guys on the back end who are probably overmatched. And I am more inclined to give Ty Emberson a bit of slack. Even Alec Regula, who I've been pretty lukewarm on for most of this year, I can at least empathize with those guys being young, unproven, trying to find their way. This team is not playing as constructed. We still have the lingering Andrew Mangiapane and Trent Frederick issues. Henrique is a candidate to potentially be traded when he gets healthy. I wish there was a world where they could find a way to move Darnell Nurse's money to really elongate this lineup, but they got nice play tonight out of Podkolzin. The pass from Kapanen is really nice. That's great. I love those guys. They do a really good job of what they're good at, but those are not top 6 swingers on a Stanley Cup contender. They're just not. It sounds hater, it sounds doomer, but teams that win the Stanley Cup have 30 goal guys on their second line in all of those spots. And look, I know the Panthers are an extreme outlier. That's one of the most talented teams of the salary cap era, but that's the bar. You are going to come against a Colorado, a Dallas, or a Minnesota, and Connor and Leon can't win games in best-of-7 series against teams with other superstars as consistently as they can against the Winnipegs and the Nashvilles of the world. That's the blessing of having great players. When you play bad teams, they're going to find ways to pull games out. They are going to win games. Maybe you shouldn't because they are that physically gifted. They are that much better than everyone else. When you come against good teams, they have good players too. And in the playoffs, those good teams generally have their good players cancel each other out. And that's where depth ultimately decides series. We talked about it after the Oilers lost in 24. We talked about it last June when they lost in 25. The Oilers' depth was not good enough against Florida's depth, and that was the difference. Connor and Leon are 2 of the best hockey players I have ever seen. They are only 2 guys. I love Bouch. I will go to the grave defending Evan Bouchard as being a top 10 defenseman in this league. That's 3 elite players. That's great. Hyman is close, but he's not on the level of a Sam Reinhardt. He's not on the level, arguably, of, dare I say, Brad Marchand. I think Hyman is better than Marchand, but it's at least a conversation. All right. Enough doom and gloom. Let's go to the weekend. I will see you guys on Monday. Thank you so much to everybody who made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we've got your team covered every day. And Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast network. Be sure to check out the Everydayer Club. The details are down in the show notes. If you are listening on audio, be sure to check out Locked On NHL Game Night, where the guys are breaking down every game every night, and you can relive the win against the Jets. If you're watching over on YouTube, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On YouTube channel. Everyone have a safe and fun weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday after the win, hopefully, dare I say, against the Kings. And until then, let's go Oilers.